Home. Over the last few months, the effects of a global pandemic caused by COVID-19 have led to varying degrees of lockdown across the world and citizens spending more time in their homes. For months, many have only been allowed to leave their homes for essential work, for supplies and for exercise. With many people on the vulnerable list unable to leave their homes at all during this time, just to venture outside for pleasure has become a huge privilege. For me, these walks have given me a privileged opportunity to explore my local environment and have been a useful coping mechanism when faced with great uncertainty. As someone who studies historic and contemporary graffiti, they have helped me to be much more aware of the world around me and helped me to reconsider how I approach my research. Graffiti marks can form an important part of how we understand particular moments in time, the recent past and historic narratives. They can make us question and re-evaluate how we understand public and private spaces, especially important in times when access to space is particularly limited for some. Graffiti can provide important voices of resistance, whilst also promoting a message of hope, solidarity and humour. During these walks, I noticed many official messages relating to COVID-19, but I also started to consider how graffitists and street artists were reacting during this time of global crisis, seeking out these marks on both a local and global scale. COVID-19 meant that governments around the world had to take drastic action, and the word unprecedented became ironically commonplace. With stay-at-home orders in force across the world over the last few months, many cities and towns were largely shut down, and local environments dramatically changed across the globe. For my walks in Manchester, this meant seeing shops boarded up, places of worship unable to open, and scheduled performances advertised that were never able to take place. These changes can be read as visual representations of shared anger, grief, and uncertainty, as our environments have changed in ways we could have only previously imagined. We have become increasingly accustomed to seeing the official physical marks representing this new way of living, for reminders about social distancing, expressions of gratitude to key workers and particularly healthcare workers, information on personal protective equipment, and also offers of help, as well as signs everywhere to the public and customers about these changes and adapting to this new way of life. The last few months have been a struggle for businesses, individuals, and communities, and it's been a strange, confusing, and even frustrating time where the very concept of normal life has been challenged. Having seen so many official communication methods and channels relating to COVID-19, this started to make me think further about how graffitists and street artists have responded both locally and globally to these confusing times. Although graffiti is often viewed quite negatively, my previous research into graffiti marks has taught me about their importance and how they can help us to understand contemporary discourses. Just as many official messages have helped to warn us about the dangers of COVID-19, many graffitists and street artists have used their resources to help and join the fight against the virus. Many of these messages have been very similar to official communications and reflected this new normal we now find ourselves in. Reminders to wear a mask when outside of the home, to wash your hands, to keep at a safe distance from one another, and when you can, to stay home, save lives. But alongside these informative messages, we've also seen the negative side of graffiti in these times, as graffiti has been used to attack particular communities and spread conspiracy theories and false information about COVID-19. In spite of these negatives, street art and graffiti have been used to help communities across the globe in a positive way, acknowledging these anxiety-inducing times and the mental health effects that the virus has caused as well. Although we should never forget about how graffiti can be used as a very negative and damaging attack on communities and individuals, it is also worth noting all of the ways that graffiti can be used positively for communities as well. During the last few months, new graffiti messages have been created to try to lift spirits, whilst older messages have taken on new meanings. As is often the case in difficult times, graffitists have been turning to comedy and humour to add some light relief to the world around us, From jokes about resetting the year to the importance of loo roll, these have become increasingly commonplace, and not something many of us would have expected to see at the start of 2020. We've also seen a new sense of community spirit as towns and cities have united together, sharing messages of hope and solidarity. There have been celebrations and reflections on important historic moments. It was during lockdown that rainbows began appearing in communities across the globe, on pavements, on streets, on walls, in trees, in windows, and on lampposts and in other unusual spaces, offering a symbol of hope and a colourful distraction in changed times. Alongside this, both ordinary citizens and artists began to publicly express their gratitude and thanks for the efforts of medical workers across the world. In the UK, NHS, standing for the National Health Service, became an even more important symbol. But there has also been increased acknowledgement of the societal impact of all key workers who have helped to keep countries going during difficult times, including those who until recently were labelled unskilled workers in the UK. Furthermore, though many medical workers have been repeatedly depicted in graffiti and street art as superheroes, there has also been increased demand and outcry for these workers to have appropriate PPE and better pay. Alongside these frustrations, growing anger towards the financial effects of COVID-19 have also been seen, with demands for better support for renters and those struggling with debts caused by the virus. Previous tensions have also come to the fore again, with concerns about the financial impact of Brexit following the economic impact of the virus, alongside the worldwide threat of climate change as well. Although COVID-related graffiti has revealed many positives in society, the virus has also exposed some of the existing social divides and exacerbated some of the economic inequalities. All of this has been demonstrated in the graffiti that surrounds us, and there have been increased calls for change and a consideration of what the new normal will be post-virus, alongside intense anger directed towards businesses, political leaders, governments, and institutions which help to uphold the current status quo. Many will ask, where has this anger come from? But the truth seems to be that it was probably always there. COVID-19 has just served to expose it further. Although it may seem like we are all in this together, this doesn't seem to be the case when certain communities have been particularly affected. Statistics in a British government document released recently have shown that individuals from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities are particularly vulnerable to COVID-19 and disproportionately impacted by other health inequalities. Alongside these deeply distressing statistics and the tragic death after being spat on of station worker Belly Majinga and the subsequent closing of her case, there has been increased anger at the institutionalised and systemic racism in the UK. Following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis in the United States by a police officer a few weeks ago, there has been further anger and fury and a global surge against racism through Black Lives Matter protests across the world, with many protesters believing that racism is a virus itself and a pandemic which has been going on for centuries. Graffiti can often be seen as the language of those unheard and silenced, as evidenced by the increased presence of BLM graffiti in recent weeks alongside COVID-19 related marks. Very recently, we have seen graffiti on and the removal of slave trader and colonialist statues, with increasing public discussions surrounding colonial and imperialist histories. Recent events and the effects of COVID-19 have further revealed and exposed historic and contemporary injustices, many of which we now see reflected in the graffiti marks around us. And the overriding question from all of this has been raised: what new normal do we wish to create post-COVID-19, and how will we get there?